Hello, 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 and welcome. We welcome you. Come on in, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. We're excited that you're here. We want you to come in and be a part of this dynamic discussion on tonight. I am Chelselia Cookee Payne, founder of PAYNE Glory Incorporated, and the administrator of this particular group and this particular segment, Pain in the Pews, Mental Health and Ministry. Listen, I am elated on tonight. If you were with us just 2 weeks ago, then you already know that who we have with us on tonight is a powerful woman who's going to share with us some amazing information. Listen, I am I'm honored because this is the end, we're at the end of September, and September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And quiet as it's kept, we need to keep the conversation open, and we need to keep the conversation going. We need we need hearts listening. We need minds understanding. We need spirits at peace, hearts at peace. We need tools, resources, information, support. We need it all. We need it all. And tonight, we are so blessed to have such a vessel that is going to provide that on tonight. So I don't want to prolong tonight. I want to dive right in. I'm so honored to know and have met this young lady. We met about 3 years ago, and as I said, if you were part of Pain in the Pews Mental Health and Ministry Conference just 2 weeks ago, you already know that she is the founder of Surviving Transitions LLC. And listen, she is not only one who has a heart for those and a passion behind those who are dealing with mental and emotional health issues. Not only does she have the licensing, and not only does she have the education, but she has the heart and the passion behind it. It's one. I am an advocate. I have the heart for those who are in need. She has the heart, the education, and the information and the resources, and I love that. And she has a pretty cool nickname, so can't go wrong there. So I bring to you Miss Shevander Cookee Dykes. Shevander, thank you for being a part of tonight's segment. Thank you so much. And if you guys hadn't seen or didn't know, the title of tonight's segment is Emotional Pain Does Not Equal Death by Suicide. And with that said, Shevander, dive into what that title means.
Sure. Thank you, Chelsea, for having me. So, emotional pain does not equal death by suicide. Oftentimes, individuals, whether they're contemplating suicide or if they've actually thought it through and said they had a plan, typically they are just hurting and they want to end the hurt, not necessarily their lives, but they don't necessarily realize that suicide is permanent and whatever they're experiencing is temporary. So it will go away, but it's so catastrophic for them right then, they don't know how to get past it. So just because I'm experiencing emotional pain, that doesn't give me the right to say, okay, I'm going to check out now. I'm going to end my life because I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to feel like this.
Right, right, right. And that's the thing I've heard many times, Shevander, is oftentimes people want the pain to end, not necessarily their life, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that line gets blurred
Mm-hmm.
when they're facing so much pain.
Right, and that's the uptick with suicide. A lot of individuals or a lot of us don't realize that it's the 10th leading cause of death overall. So it's not like we can downplay it or minimize the impact that it has on our community, but it hasn't went anywhere. Despite COVID, individuals are still feeling the need to end their lives.
Right. Right. And what's interesting to me, or what should be brought to light, is something you said when we were off camera. just because we're talking about it, just because you bring it up, just because you ask someone the targeted questions, do you have a plan? Are you thinking about suicide? Does not mean that they will carry it out. It actually can have the opposite effect. So talk a
Right.
little bit about the necessity for the conversation.
So, if you tuned in 2 weeks ago, we talked about the conversation needs to continue and it still needs to be had in our communities. And the greatest myth is if we talk about suicide, that may make someone actually want to go ahead and do it. But that's a myth. Studies have shown that if you actually have that conversation and you open the floor up, people will be transparent. They will share with you if they are actively considering are experiencing suicidal ideations. They'll tell you about homicidal ideations, but you have to make that environment therapeutic where it's non judgmental, but at the same time, you're there to listen.
Right.
You're there to listen, no judgment. And close to 50,000 people die annually by suicide.
And
So,
and that's and interestingly enough, I know we've heard probably all of my life up until recent years, we always would hear the term committing suicide, but
yes,
the terminology now has changed, and
yes,
it's in the title, death by suicide. Can you expound
yes.
upon that a little bit?
Sure, because when we think about a heart attack, we don't commit a heart attack.
We don't commit a heart attack. Right.
We don't commit an injury. We don't
Correct.
commit diabetes. We don't
Correct.
commit hypertension. So why would we actually commit suicide?
Correct.
The language is important. So when you say death by suicide, we can relate that unfortunately that person may have passed due to taking his or her own life. So they didn't
Right.
commit per se, but
Correct.
they actually died by suicide.
Correct. And you know what I'm finding interesting, and
Mm.
maybe Shavanda, that maybe I never paid attention to it before, or it may have already been
Mm-hmm.
there. Maybe I'm hypersensitive now. Is that I noticed that even in medications, they will cite some of the side effects can be suicidal ideations.
Yes.
And that's interesting to me because oftentimes we try to those that are not who are on the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
who do not have the suicidal ideations are expecting it to come one way. There was a traumatic event or something
Sure.
happened or whatever, and we don't look at all facets. We don't look at all factors that could factor in. And it's amazing to me how the human body is made up, that a prescription medication, or sometimes non-prescription recreational,
Mm-hmm.
can recreational can give suicidal ideations. And that's important to know. It's important to talk to your physician about what you're taking in. I know that there are other factors, environmental, there's other factors, but
Mm-hmm.
I did not I wanted to kind of bring that one in as well about the medications, because as I said, it may have all, they may have, big pharma may have already been saying it in the advertisements, but I think that now I'm seeing it more often, or maybe I'm just more attentive to it. But that is certainly something that I found interesting. So if you would, what are some of the that in what are some of the factors? I know I mentioned environmental, but what are some of the top, if there's a such thing, um, uh, items that would cause a person to have these ideations, if there's a such thing?
Okay, so before I answer that, I want to kind of piggyback on the side effects piece that you said, where you
Yes.
may experience suicidal ideations. Typically, when a physician prescribes medication, they are prescribing it because the benefits outweigh the risk. Every
Right.
medication you take has a side effect, even over the counter drugs. They have a side effect. And the
Yep.
best way to counteract that is to keep that line of communication open with your physician. and or the nurse,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know that you're experiencing this until you actually call and report that. So if you don't
Yes.
report it, how do they know that you're actually experiencing this, and how to best treat you
Mhm.
to say, let's discontinue this medication, let's try something else? There are options that are available, but again, they prescribe it because the risk outweigh the benefits, meaning you would therapeutically benefit from taking this
Yes,
versus not having this. And
exactly.
yeah.
Yes. I totally agree with that. That is so true. And I think I love what you just said. I love what you just said about going back to your physician and asking them, change my prescription, even for people who are taking medication and they say that it makes me feel, a certain way. It makes me feel out of sorts or whatever. You don't have to you're not locked in.
Right.
Go back to your physician and let them know what's going on. So I really appreciate you saying that.
And so that's, yeah, that's a key component to that transparency and that open dialogue. But to answer your
Mhm.
question, the best way to predict suicide would be past history of anyone attempting suicide in the past, and or, for lack of better words, a family member possibly passing or death by suicide. We look at environmental, we look at biological, and there's so many factors that make up that whole paradigm. But being intentional, this is why it's critical to know your family history.
Oh,
We really need to know how Uncle Uncle Tyrone, for lack of better words, was found dead. But now we later find out that's not. We know he was found dead, but no one really wants to speak on it. And when it comes to our communities, we're just like, shh, shh. He slipped
right,
off and drowned. Well, his cause of death doesn't say he drowned, it says something differently. So we
right,
have to keep those conversations going. We have to educate our communities. And more importantly, even if it feels uncomfortable, I would rather feel uncomfortable than to ignore some of the warning signs. I would
right.
rather literally feel bad that, okay, well, I asked you this and you said you wasn't thinking about it, but you had thought about it in the past. I'd rather do that than get a call the next day finding out that you actually died by suicide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. I said the same thing. I gave a similar analogy about domestic abuse. I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
say something and be wrong and have you mad at me or feeling
Mm-hmm.
awkward around me than to be right and not say anything and then have to go and the outcome be horrendous. So I thank you for saying that. So aside from conversations like this, which I think is wonderful, and I appreciate you so much, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Aside from conversations like this, how do we, in our community, let's be honest, how do we broach the conversation maybe in our homes or in our churches and our communities? How do we broach the conversation?
I think it's no different than any other conversation. Normally, if you want to check in, you may ask questions. Have you ever experienced this? Do you have friends that have talked about suicide? What do you think? Even if your children are old enough to understand and go to school, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these documentaries that they may have seen, or even some of the programming, they may refer to someone, quote unquote, committed suicide or death by suicide. So normally when they're curious, they'll come ask you, but beat them to the punch. If they haven't asked you, let's have this discussion on what the warning signs look like. Because if you have one friend, they're always talking about, I don't have a reason to live. I don't want to be here anymore. They start giving you like all of their little LOL dolls, all of their favorite things. We know that we really need to check in, but more importantly, we need to report that to someone.
Right, right.
So that's not
And
something that you just brush off like, she having a bad day. But even
right.
feeling full of rage, emptiness, hopelessness, and just
Oh,
like, I don't have anything to live for. And the changes in behaviors, just withdrawing from everyone. If
right.
you hadn't seen someone in 3 weeks and you're used to seeing them every day, we have a problem, Houston.
No
We have a
problem.
problem.
Right. And again, I'd rather to be wrong, even if it's not a problem, I'd rather be wrong and
Mm-hmm.
everything be okay than be right and not check. I
Yeah.
had something similar happen, Shevander, at my job. There was a colleague of mine that I don't work directly with.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that something was different. I noticed that he was acting different, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just I at first I was like, well, maybe that's me because I don't really work directly with him. I don't really know if that's how he normally is. So I asked someone else. I asked, is this how this person normally is? You know, maybe it's just me. And so when I asked, someone else said, you know what? I have been noticing he was acting different. So what I did was I took the person who was with me and I said, we went to his supervisor. We went to our supervisor actually. And we said, I told him, I said, this could be nothing. I don't know, but I want to bring it to your attention. This person has been acting different, and this has been going on for a few days. This is not just a one-day thing. I've noticed it. And so what they did immediately was went to their direct supervisor because our supervisor was kind of like in our same position, didn't really work directly with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we went to his direct supervisor and brought it to his attention. What happened after that, what the conversation was, I'm not certain, but I do know that that person, the behaviors changed. So I don't know if he got help or if it was I don't know the situation, but I'm glad I said something because I could
Yes.
see a complete difference about a week or two later. It wasn't like, oh, next day he's, it was a little time, but I'm glad that I said something. And who knows, maybe he was too. I never approached him. Maybe he was too. Maybe he was glad that someone noticed that something was
Mm-hmm.
different about him. Maybe
Thank
he
you.
he maybe he was appreciative that somebody noticed, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay. I'm
And
not okay.
sometimes that's all it takes. Because I mean, you just brought up a real valuable point. Even when you're on the job and you notice someone that is struggling, not like for a few hours, but 3 days out, they seem extremely irritable. Their productivity is struggling. That person can be dealing with something so intense that even being at work could possibly put them in a rage, but they only display that around people versus answering the phone. So many
Right.
employers have EAP programs, employee assistance programs. So they will pay for counseling for you up to 12 sessions, some of them, and some of them are only 5. But those interventions are there so that if you are experiencing something, go talk to someone. You don't have to necessarily tell your employer what it is. This is why they contract with EAP providers to ensure that you get that level of support when you need it. So
Mm-hmm.
for him, I mean, I'm grateful that you were paying attention and then you shared it with someone else because that could have been
I did.
really, really, really impactful. But then, too, it sounds like it was life changing for him. It wasn't brushed off, someone noticed.
Someone noticed. And I definitely saw the difference. Like I said, I went to a colleague and I was like, listen,
Mm-hmm.
is this how he normally acts? I don't want to jump and assume, but listen, something's not right. And I
Right.
didn't wait. I didn't say, well, let me just wait a few more days and see if no, I went straight to our supervisor and said, this could be something, it could be nothing, but I want to bring it to your attention. And that you know what that EAP is? I'm glad you brought that up. That is something that is so wonderful that employers offer, especially now. I don't even think that people have talked about it as much. People may not have
Mm-hmm.
even known it was on their job until this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wonderful thing that people are utilizing it and have it available because it really helps to be able to, if you're on your job and say, listen, I'm having a hard time. I need to go and talk to EAP. I need to make an appointment to go see EAP. And it's completely confidential. You
Mm-hmm.
have, that time with the specialist there. And it is helpful because, you know, there's so many things going on that
Yeah.
having that EAP available is so key. And so I asked, so another question for you, I have, Shevander. The topic we have before us is emotional pain does not equal death by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What are in your encounters or in what you have for us on tonight, what are some of those emotional pains?
The greatest that I've seen just within the last 4 to 6 months has been I lost my spouse, not just due to quote unquote a hereditary condition, but I lost him to COVID. I'm in so much pain, I no longer want to live. I'm not concerned about the children. I'm not concerned, how this will look. I just don't want to live anymore because my wife passed and she's all I had. So I've seen that. I've also seen what people consider a catastrophic breakup with maybe puppy love. And it's just, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I've seen some domestic violence stuff look like emotional pain when the survivor gets away and she's being manipulated by, or he's being manipulated by a narcissistic partner and saying, hey, if you don't come back to me, I'm going to kill myself. So I've seen a lot of that recently, and like I said, within the last 4 to 6 months. But the uptick that I've seen with individuals expressing, hey, I don't care if I wake up in the morning, has definitely been around COVID, losing family members, community members, colleagues, church members. But when it's a spouse, it has been like 100%. I don't really know if I want to go on with my life.
Right, right. And you're so right that when grief grips a person, it is almost as a sucker punch, almost for in a boxer in a ring. It comes out of nowhere, and it is a hard punch, and that grief will certainly take its toll. I I'm I'm wondering, and I'm so grateful. I'm looking at the comments here. Thank you all who are joining in. Please be sure to share. We actually going to be Shevander here has something to give away. So as you're sharing, I'm going to be noting down who's sharing, and we're going to have a giveaway. We're gonna make sure that we give away a wonderful gift in a little bit. So getting back to the emotional pain, we it's not. I want to kind of hone in on something you said a moment ago. It's not just the passing of a spouse. But you also mentioned that puppy love, and that when you said puppy love, I know that any age can experience that. But what I wanted to get to was our youth who are having a hard time, and because we adults have not properly, in some instances, I'm not painting with a broad brushstroke, but some have not properly had the conversation because we didn't know how. Nobody told us. It's kind of a perpetual thing. We don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to broach the conversation, and so we don't the communication about all other things. We can talk about sports, school, TV, TikTok, everything else. But when it comes to the emotional health of our youth, one of the things I've heard, since the beginning of this pandemic, to be honest with you, more than I've heard in my 51 years is kids are resilient.
Mm-hmm.
They kids are resilient. That might be true, but they still go through stuff. They
Yes, they
still have
do.
emotions. They still deal with stuff. So if you would talk to us about the effects that we're seeing with our young people.
With some of our young people, they are struggling not just in the new norm, but what if they've lost a classmate? What if they've lost a teacher? They're just struggling because, hey, I'm a teenager. You know, I'm
Right.
I'm 12, I'm 13, now I'm going to school. Now my world has been flipped upside down because I don't have the interpersonal connection that I had with somebody riding the bus every day. I've been
Right.
homeschooled and I missed out on my social pieces with getting in the lunchroom and talking and looking at what this person's doing for the weekend, or just listening and being part of a conversation. But what about the young person who is just like in all of this, feeling clueless because nobody really checked in on him or her, and they assume or just take for granted that, he is highly gifted. Oh, if there was anything going on, he would tell me. But what if this same
Hmm.
person had been bullied
Right.
7, 8 months,
Right.
and he is internalizing it and compartmentalizing it and saying, okay, if this bully does this one more time, I'm going to do something about it. Nobody
Right.
follows up to see what that something is, but he's been internalizing and compartmentalizing this, and now he's in high school. You know,
Right.
how did we miss the signs? So this isn't the time to blame, but let's
Right.
have this conversation, even if that means I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'd
Right.
rather be uncomfortable than you not being here.
Right. That is so true. And yes, I like what Erica Lopez said. I just had it up on the screen when she said kids are technically little people and should be treated
Mm-hmm.
as such. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
The same grace that we give adults, we should offer to our young people. So, which brings me to okay, so our whole the whole platform is called Pain in the Pews, Mental Health and Ministry. So
Mm-hmm.
let's get over to the church because over the past several months, I had the opportunity, Shevander, to be a part of, and I think you actually were on there a few months ago. Faith Based Mental Health Initiative
Mm-hmm.
had a
Yes.
conference, and one of the guest speakers, I can't remember, to be honest with you, I can't remember if she said it while she was on screen or if she said it while we were off. But one of the speakers who was from the HHS, she was talking about several Kojic pastors who had they had this is not suicide, but they had passed away because of
Mm-hmm.
COVID. But one of the things that caught my attention, which was not said in that particular segment, but she was taught what I'm correlating in that instance was she was talking about how heavy it was that so many bishops and pastors and leaders had passed away in this short period of time due to COVID-19. But if you look at it, also we've lost several pastors and leaders over the past 18 to 24 months due to death by suicide.
Yes.
And this was before COVID-19 came. But since it's been here, I've also read articles and seen articles of pastors and ministry leaders and spiritual leaders who have died by suicide. And you alluded to a moment ago. There have been family members and church members who have passed away, and not knowing how to deal with that, and no one is saying that spiritual leaders can't have pre-existing issues. No one, they can they can have environmental, biological, they can have all
Yes.
these things that we as lay
Mm-hmm.
members. So I know that there's a great deal to do with our faith when it comes to death by suicide. I know there's a lot out there about, you know, what is and what isn't. But let's be honest about it. We are human beings. And
Yes.
and those thoughts and ideations come, and if they come, if there is no outlet, if there's no teaching, if there's no understanding on how to best get the help that is needed, it's an unfortunate and tragic outcome.
Yeah.
So again, aside from these conversations that you and I are having, what can be done to raise awareness in the church?
It's funny you asked that because I was planning a suicide conference at the end of last year, like November, December. I
Mm.
had talked with my bishop and I asked him, is this something we could possibly look at doing? He was like, hey, let me know. Whatever you
Wow.
need, we have that. I reached out to three of my friends that are nurses. I reached out to DBHDD. I reached out
Wow.
to the Office of Suicide Prevention, and we were so looking forward to this. And then COVID happened. So it kind of put things on the back burner because I was hoping to have this by January or February, but unfortunately I ended up with the flu. So it kind of, again, got pushed to the back burner. So I
Right,
know
right,
this is
right,
something that I definitely have to do before the end of the year. However, we have to be like really, really transparent. Our
right,
leaders,
right,
ministry leaders, our bishops, our preachers, our teachers, they are human. They are flesh. So they are not exempt from experiencing any of these things that we too experience on a daily basis. And even just being straight up, a lot of the children say, let's keep it 100. Let's talk. When
right.
you look in most individuals, if not all, somebody has experienced fleeting suicidal ideations. I have. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Um,
Right.
I've been flying since I was a year and a half old. I remember boarding a plane one time because my grandmother was a frequent flyer before Delta even had Sky Miles. So we would go to
Oh,
California regularly. And I remember sitting on the plane, and my uncle Junior had took us down, drove us down that morning. We had to get there really, really early, and we had a flat tire. And I'm
okay.
thinking, I know we better get on this plane. Like, we can't miss this plane. I'm ready to go
Right.
see my great grandma, my cousins. And as we were on the side changing the tire, I remember thinking, what if somebody hits his car and we go over the bridge? Like, ooh.
Mhm.
And then when I finally got on the plane, like, what if the plane crashes? Ooh. So that didn't mean I didn't want to wake up, but I was thinking in my little person's mind, like, what if this happens?
Right.
And again, it's no different than having any other conversation, but some people at some point, I'm just say me, you can experience suicidal ideations. That does not mean you have to act on them. You can feel
That
like,
is,
okay, man, I'm just, ugh, I don't know if I'm gonna make it today. I don't know. But that doesn't mean that you want to die. That just means you're having a
right,
really tough time.
right. Oh, Shevander. Oh, we're gonna stay there. I had something else, but I'm pushing that aside because you just opened up not even a can, you opened up a whole vat. So in your little girl mind, right, you just gave an excellent analogy that I'd never ever heard anyone give an example of an ideation like that.
Mm-hmm.
Never, ever, ever. So in that moment, of course, as a kid, you're not saying I want the car to hit us.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying, what if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
In the plane, you were saying, what if this happens? Being someone who suffers from panic attack and anxiety, that's a constant. That
Yes. And you
is a
can't
constant.
live that down. It's always elevated.
Exactly. So the fact of how you explain that, if I were an emoji, it'd be the head blown emoji. The
Mm-hmm.
way that you've explained that. So if you could, what are some other scenarios, some other examples of what it may seem like for a person? You gave some examples of a person who has lost someone, or a person who has been in a domestic violence situation, or a person who has a biological um, um, malady. Any example you want to give, any examples that you want to give. I don't want to just lock you into,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
nothing like that. But the one that you just gave was so powerful. I'm literally sitting here like I never thought of it. It was all kind of linear, but you have kind of
Mm-hmm.
opened it doesn't all look similar. It can be different.
Yes, it is different because each of us are unique. And just thinking back, I remember asking my uncle, like, are we going to die? Like, I was freaked out that we were on side of the road and we were like in New Orleans. Like, okay, what if
Right,
somebody hits
right,
us?
right,
And my
right.
grandmother was like, hey, get in the car. And by the time we finally got on the plane, She was like, we have flown too many times. She said, we pray every time we get on this plane. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what if we don't make it? And my grandmother
Right.
was like, we're going to make it. Oh, we're going to make it. And I'm in my little mind, I'm still sitting here like, okay, but stuff happens all the time,
Right.
because I just
Right.
thought doom and gloom. Here we didn't had a blowout and we're like 20 minutes from the airport. Now the plane going to go down. In my little mind, I was already thinking the worst
Right.
and just really going through some stuff for a little person. And my grandmother,
Right.
in her little loving, calm voice, she reassured me, you're going to be fine. We going to be fine. We were just up here 2 months ago. We made it safe. You had a good time. You came back home. And again, I'm like, okay, we almost died in my mind. And she's looking at me like,
Right.
no, we didn't. Your uncle had a flat tire. That's it. Your Uncle Junior got out the car. He told you to get back in. You didn't want to stay in the car. I told you if you get out the car again, I was going to whoop your butt. And so, I got in the car. But in my little mind, I'm like,
Right.
oh, Lord. That's when I probably realized what anxiety was because I was just nervous. Like, oh,
Right.
man. Even down to
And you
biting my
held on
nails,
to
like,
that.
yes, come
And,
on, hurry up.
and that, because there was not you mentioned the car, but you didn't say that there was anything wrong with the plane, but it stayed with you on the plane. You
The
carried
whole
that with
time.
you.
The whole time.
Wow.
And my grandmother was like, normally you look out the window. Normally you like to see the birds. I was on my grandmother like a baby calf. Like I wasn't moving. I was like right at her side. She was like, "Come on, let's eat." I didn't want anything to eat. I didn't want to do
Right.
anything until we had landed safely.
Right. Right.
And just kind of
Wow.
thinking back, it was like, okay, you think about individuals that struggle with substance abuse.
Right.
You think about individuals that have served our country.
Right.
Like all of these different populations, they have experienced trauma at some point. So this is why we have to be careful when we're talking about quote unquote the church and realize that our leaders are human. They're just like
Yes.
us.
Right.
They're not excluded from experiencing any type of trauma. They're not excluded
Right.
from expressing
Right.
themselves. They're not even excluded from making mistakes because guess what? We all make mistakes. So
Absolutely.
we can't hold them to a different standard and then have a double standard. But churches
Right.
have to be mindful. Like this is the time we live in when things were so taboo. We wouldn't talk about that. We would not talk about this before. Think
Right.
about the person that's experiencing an identity crisis. Like I had a client call literally 3 hours ago. She believed her stepfather was her biological father the whole time. She's just finding out my my stepfather is not my father. And her mother is reportedly angry at her because she wants to know who her father is. And she is having a meltdown, tailspin. She is really struggling right now.
Right.
And while she still loves her stepfather or her dad, she's like, who am I? How did I get
Right.
here? Like, mom,
No.
what you what you doing? Can you share something? And mom is just lashing out and verbally abusing her. And that conversation
No.
wasn't pleasant with her mother. But again,
Wow.
she's having a whole identity crisis. She's a professional
Right.
woman. Again, she's just
Right.
like, how am I supposed to keep my how am I supposed to keep this together? Like
Right.
what do I
That is
do?
the epitome of the emotional pain that we're dealing with. My goodness, that's emotional pain. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And as an adult, she's having to unpack all of that.
Right
That's a
now, because
lot.
she wants answers today. And she's
Oh
going
yeah.
through that
Oh
and,
yeah.
and just trying to process it. But then think about a little person. If they have a pet, your first dog get killed, first cat going across the street, they get killed. They don't make it. What do you do with
Yeah.
that? Or your first fish, you got to flush him down the toilet. You done overfed him. And your 4 or 5 year old is just boo hooing like, and sometimes as parents, we try to be smart We may go to the store and get another goldfish, but eventually they find out that's not their fish.
Yeah. That's not the same fish. Right.
Mm-mm.
Right.
And we have to
And
be
you're
okay.
people, yeah. And it's interesting, to note that people, you know, depending on the relationship, adults and children, they, become so attached to their pets that it's really traumatic to them when they have to either put them down or something happens to them, and because they become as family, and that is hard for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are not pet owners, or who don't have a relationship with their pets like that like other people
Right.
do, they don't get it. And oftentimes that not just with pets, when people are dealing with grief, and or loss of any kind, divorce, death, if that wasn't your experience, if you didn't have it that hard, then you don't have the bandwidth to understand why this person is still grieving, why this
Mm-hmm.
person still
Mm-hmm.
hasn't gotten over it. And that's where that education piece comes in. That's where, things like what you were talking about, the suicide prevention conference you were talking about, having discussions like this comes into play, because and mental health first aid definitely comes
Yeah.
into play, because if we don't understand it, having the ability to empathize, having the ability to know what I may not be going through that, but I can empathize with you. I've never had a heart attack, but I'm sure it hurts. I've never had a broken limb, but I'm sure that there's a cast involved. So there's things that I've never experienced, but I can understand when someone else is, and can empathize with them. So I love that you have some tools for us that can help us in this journey called getting through this emotional pain without that
Yeah.
does not equal to a death by suicide. So what are some of the tools that we can use?
Okay, so these are just some things I jotted down earlier. Ask. These are 5 action steps to helping someone in emotional pain. If they're in real time emotional pain, ask. 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 Are
Okay.
you thinking about killing yourself? I mean, you don't have to be a therapist to ask this question. You don't have to be a school teacher. Hey, are you thinking about killing yourself?
And you don't have to beat around the bush. You can ask directly.
Please. Because I may tell you something like, well, no, I'm not thinking about that, but I didn't start giving all my things away. Or I haven't came out the house in 21 days and I've stopped taking my medication. Um, I'm diabetic. I rely on insulin and I don't want it anymore. So asking typically gets that conversation started. In addition to asking, keeping them safe. If you know that person has knives in the home, guns, even tasers, like get that stuff, lock it up, even if it's prescription medication that they haven't taken in 2 years, remove the lethal items for them. Be there. Listen carefully and acknowledge their feelings. Don't say, well, yeah, man, I get it. Mm-hmm. Yep, I had something just like that, but man, see, it worked out for me. Don't minimize because we're not talking about you. We're talking
Yes.
about the
Yes.
person who is
Say that
experiencing
again.
the emotional pain. So don't minimize their experience so you can share how you got over. Because we're glad you got over, but you're not the one in pain right now. So
Absolutely.
that's something
Absolutely.
different. And
Absolutely.
help them. You got to help them connect. The National Suicide Prevention Life number. We have the I'm Not Okay app or Not Okay app. We have the My GCal app. Like you can literally download these apps and interact. Definitely with My GCal, you can interact with a counselor on the other end. That person can triage you. That person can get you what you need. We can look at if you need mobile crisis or not. And then the Not Okay app. And there's so many others, but understanding one, what the helplines look like. You got to first acknowledge, like, hey, I ain't feeling my best. I'm
Right.
not really thinking about this, but I don't want to be here anymore. Helplines. Once you
Right.
help them connect, stay connected. Follow up and touch bases after a crisis. I mean,
Is
you
that number
can't.
5?
That's number 5. Stay connected, even if it's
Oh,
just
I'm
a text message like, "Hey, I know you were having a rough time the other week. This person may have actually went to the hospital, had to be 1013, and they've came home, and they're home now from this hospitalization. They don't want to tell everybody like, hey, I had a psychiatric hospitalization, I had a meltdown, but follow up with that person. Like, hey, are you okay? Are you good? If that person says, hey, this was my experience, this is what it was like.
right.
Like, don't not follow up, or do not follow up and think, okay, well, they got to be fine, because you cared enough to help them get to this place. And when we're thinking about the stages of grief, denial, all these things kick in. What if I'm grieving that I can't do what I once was able to do? My only solution is to end this, thinking that the world won't get any better.
Right.
Taking me back to me being 3 or 4, the doom and gloom set in with me,
Right.
from the flat tire to the plane going down. And
Right.
no one told me that. Like, I literally created a scenario that wasn't even real.
Wow.
But when you
Shevander, you have helped me in that statement, in that scenario, in the statement you just said, more than you could ever know. I'm gonna tell you how, and I'm gonna try to say it without crying because I have no tissue. But I promise you, in the scenario you just gave and the
mm-hmm,
statement you just made, helped me. 2 years ago, in a few days, 2 years ago, on Sunday, will be my best friend's birthday. It is
mm-hmm,
also the day that she passed away. And we were extremely close, um, very close, almost like twins. I was thinking that she was saying it. It was a little odd. Well, not to us. But here's the thing. That was all wonderful. We had a great friendship, never any arguments, not even one in 36 years. Never had
wow,
any disagreements, nothing. But our birthdays are 45 days apart. The year she passed away was our 50th. So we had
mm-hmm,
made plans, the whole 50th.
mm-hmm,
But she passed on her 50th. So lead for 45 straight days, I was terrified,
mm-hmm,
traumatized, and overwhelmed, thinking that I was going to leave here on my 50th because we were so close that in my mind, that's just how it was going to be. So even
mm-hmm,
though I planned a birthday celebration, I put on the mask, we gotta,
mm-hmm. Right.
was that it, I was like, and every day leading up to that was like torture. Pretty much like like you said, the little girl you.
Mm-hmm,
Like, what's gonna happen?
mm-hmm,
Because for her, it was so sudden. It wasn't like, anything prolonged. And I was like, what?
kind of
And
dreading that day.
huh?
Kind of dreading that day.
Dreading that day. What would have been a happy day as a milestone, 50th, but dreading it. And then when you gave the example of little Shevander and that and the car broken down on the side, and you dreading, you having that in your mind, even though you've flown plenty of times, even
Mm-hmm,
though you had your grandmother there to comfort you and let you know it's gonna be okay. In your mind, you're on that plane like, well, we can go down at any moment. What if all these what ifs, right?
mm-hmm.
we that what if is so debilitating. It is debilitating. I barely slept because of the what ifs, because I was so close to that human being
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, I don't, on the date, the night before my birthday party, because my birthday party wasn't actually on my birthday, so I still was not, I wasn't past, the day, so I was
Mm-hmm.
still, hey, and then I get home, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Terrified.
and right, and the what you said about the follow up is so key. And then what you said about earlier about when people aren't behaving like they normally do. I'm so grateful that I did or do have someone in my life who was like, you okay? Something, I mean, I know I
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on, but I'm here if you need me, calling and texting me. That meant a lot because I'd never
Mm-hmm.
experienced that. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with that. And then when you said just now, the analogy you gave just now, just kind of like opened up that understanding that it is definitely a process, but that understanding that when that trauma hits you, or when that grief hits you, or when that situation hits you, whatever it is that hits you, those thoughts come,
Yes.
and it is a battle.
Mm-hmm.
It and they don't always, like you said, everybody's different. Those thoughts don't always look the same, because I wasn't saying I wanted to leave here. I was scared that I was going to.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about anxiety, being riddled with anxiety, trauma,
Right.
shock, like all these things compounded. You lost your best friend. She was like a sister to you.
Yeah.
Here you're fearful, like, man, am I gonna make it to my 50th? I know we're supposed to celebrate, but Lord, if you
Mhm.
call me home, probably not
Mhm.
even sleeping, worrying yourself about,
You're
am I
telling
gonna
the
make it?
you're telling the truth.
And that's serious. Like some people, they don't just have insomnia because they can't sleep, but sometimes it's hard for them to turn their brains off. They're thinking the worst, like, oh
Oh,
man, am I gonna wake up
come
and
on now.
well, let me just stay up because man, I know the minute I go to sleep, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
Were you here? Well, you must have. You were here, right?
That's the reality for a lot of
That is
people.
the reality. That is exactly how it was. So now, okay, in that particular vein, with whatever, with the example I just gave, or with people who are dealing with grief or anxiety or just hopelessness, what are some tools they can use to combat that? You said about the brain not being able to shut off. What are some of the things that we can do? I know I love what you said, and I posted them up here a moment ago. The five you gave the five examples, but what are some of the things that we can do to kind of settle the noise?
To kind of quieten the noise, I encourage any and everybody to like really be intentional. If you know that you're feeling down, or this is the anniversary of someone's death, and you know that unfortunately it makes you feel like you don't want to be here, get somebody to be there with you, even if it's somebody on the phone, even if it's somebody's dinner or after church or something. If that looks like I'm inviting you over, yeah, we're in COVID, but you can talk. We can literally be in our cars. You talk in your car, I'm in my car. We're having this conversation, not being left alone. So isolating, like all the things that you would typically think of, that's not the time, from
Mm-hmm.
listening to music to isolating. And what if it's just you need someone to just check in on you?
Mm-hmm.
Because typically when you think about coping skills and strategies, you think about somebody checking in. But what if I hadn't checked in on you all month, and to know that you care, I finally call you and I don't want to get off the phone with you. We've talked for 2 hours, and I
Right.
tell you at the end of this conversation, Cecilia, I am so glad you called because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a reason to live. You've helped
Mm-hmm.
me really identify my purpose, and I feel so much better because I had some fleeting thoughts about killing myself. And here, all you did was made a phone call.
Made a phone call.
You thought it
And
meant so little, but it was just significant for the person
wow,
on the other end. So
wow,
caring, it only takes a minute to care. Like, how would you want someone to care for you if the shoe was on the other foot? What would you
absolutely.
want somebody to do or say? Like, it's not
Right,
uncommon for me with my clients. I will make a safety box. In that box, they have a journal, they have pens, they have music, they have all this in this box, and these are things that make them feel safe. But it also allows them to really explore what's going on. And even if it's three people that they put in their phone, like years ago, I think it was T-Mobile that had like the favorite five people you would call. Like, they would write
right,
this
right, right.
down.
Top five. Yeah,
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 talk it out. Like, okay,
yeah.
talk it out. And not having it bottled up. Even if you feel like, hey man, this is dumb, I know ain't nobody gonna listen. Put it out there. Somebody cares. Because knowing that somebody cares makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I'm telling you, that is, whew, you are hitting the nail on the head completely. Before I forget, I want you to show the journal that you have. So on tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Shevander has a wonderful journal that she's going to be giving away. It is a self-discovery journal. And inside this journal, it has action items for you to do. It is actually very interactive. It is something that will keep you oh wow, that's interesting that you would hold it up on that page because that is actually a course I'm about to start about being your authentic self. That is amazing. That
Wow.
is amazing. I'm about to launch that in very shortly, but it has all these goodies on it, and we're going to give it
Yes.
away. I want to know, is Erica Lopez still online? Erica Lopez, if you're still online, let me know if you are still here. Gonna wait a couple of seconds. And so inside the book, it has all those affirmations. So it has all these actions for you to do. I know Shonda, Pastor Shonda said it is a very nice journal. Yes, it is. It has all sorts of goodies, and it's not thin either. It's a nice size journal. Erica Lopez. Hello, Erica. I called you out because I selected you to be the recipient of the journal. So all you have to do is inbox me with your contact information. That will be your mailing address, and I'll make sure that Shevander gets it, and she will send it right to you, Miss Lopez. So I just selected you to be the recipient of this particular journal. So congratulations to you, Erica Lopez. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Oh, you're welcome. I love it. She said, "Yay, thank you." You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. So, Shevander, please, you've given us so many good nuggets. You've given us meat, not just nuggets. You've given us meat. This is great. Tell us, number one, because many people heard you say that your clients, that you're speaking about your clients, and if you guys weren't able to be with us on a couple of weeks ago when we had our mental health and ministry conference. I want you, Shevander, to tell people how they can get in contact with you and what services you offer and how they can get in contact with
Okay. Well, I am in the healthcare profession and I specialize in mental wellness. The quickest way for you to reach me is www.survivingtransitions with an S, survivingtransitions.com. There is a tab on there that says contact us. So that's probably the quickest way because normally my voicemail fills up pretty quickly and I'll check the emails first and then go through the voicemails. And I see anybody with a pulse. I work with individuals, families, and Again, anybody with a pulse.
I love it. Now let's clarify. What do you, when you say you work with them, what do you do? What do you work with them? What are your concentration areas?
Oh, I guess that would help, right? So I work with individuals struggling with anxiety, depression, mood disorders. That's my specialty, mood disorders and anxiety. I work with families that are looking to adopt. I work with youth offenders, so DJJ, defects. I mean, I work with a myriad of individuals needing services from individual counseling to family counseling to group counseling. And every now and then, I may do some skills training for individuals like parenting skills. Those that may have lost their children, now to get their children home, really looking at parenting curriculum so that they can parent effectively and not make the same mistakes that caused them to need attention initially.
Absolutely. And for those who may not know, just so that we cover everything, what are some things that we put? Let me try my new mouth. What will be some things that will be considered a mood disorder?
Whoa. A mood disorder would definitely be major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, bipolar 1 or 2, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia. These are your mood disorders. Um, anything that anything that impacts your mood to the degree that you require assistance, you require talk therapy, possibly medication prescribed by a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner. Those are the specialty things. I typically have the cases that nobody wants to touch.
Wow. Wow. And you're located where?
I am located in Douglasville. Due to the pandemic, I am not
How-
meeting face to face. We're
That's
only doing virtual sessions.
so you're available everywhere because it's virtual. So there's you're
Yes,
available right in the comfort of someone's home.
yes, yes.
Love it.
Flexible hours and scheduling.
Oh wow. Oh wow. That's awesome. So really, to be honest, all excuses are off the table. With the help is available to us. And I do know that Shevander has some, she spoke earlier about some links and some apps that are available to us for suicide prevention and helplines. And we'll make sure that those are in this thread here so that you can come back at any time and get that information. I have her website right up here on the screen and in the thread, you'll see survivingtransitions.com. And Shevander, just thank you. Thank you for being
You're
our
welcome.
guest on tonight,
Thank you
for
for having me.
sharing so much wisdom and the tools and tips that we have enjoyed on this evening. Thank you to all those who have tuned in, those who shared the broadcast. Much congratulations to Erica Lopez for being the recipient of tonight's giveaway, which was the wonderful journal. It is very nice too. It is extremely nice. And really just a confirmation to me, Shevander, that you open it up on the page of something that I'm getting ready to launch that I haven't even talked about, which is amazing to me. It was almost a full title. I was like, whoa, that's that is amazing. So God is awesome. God is awesome. He has a way of
Confirmation.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Listen, I want to thank you guys for joining in. We are here every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. for PAYNE in the Pews Mental Health and Ministry Facebook Live broadcast. Listen, also be sure to go on over to payneglory.com. That's PAYNE and so it's spelled out, not the ampersand sign. So it's payneglory.com, and you can order for yourself a copy of the book that I'm a part of. I'm co-author of an anthology called "There's No Health Without Mental Health," and I'll be more than happy once you place your order. I'll be more than happy to sign it for you and send it out directly to you. So that is the benefit of ordering it directly from the PAYNE Glory site. Also, feel free to head over to mentalhealthandministry.com. It's a community, and you'll be able to get information there as well. So I would love to see you over there, mentalhealthandministry.com, where you'll see information over there. Be sure to go to survivingtransitions.com. Also, follow Surviving Transitions on Facebook and on Instagram. Be sure, because she has some good stuff that she shares on social media. So be sure to follow her on Facebook. That's Surviving Transitions on Facebook. You definitely want to follow. And if you're not already following us here on PAYNE Glory, go ahead and hit that follow button. You know you want to. So listen, have an amazing Monday night. Have an amazing week. Remember, if you or someone you know is having suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, or just need someone to talk to, there's hope and there's help. And we'll make sure that that information is provided for you right here in this thread, so you don't have to go looking all over the place. It'll be right here for you. We love you. God bless. And we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you.